Hey there, Cambridge. This is City Councilor Nadeem Maz, and I'm coming to you today with a brief update on the National League of Cities Conference in Washington, D.C., where I and my fellow councilors join Cambridge City leadership and elected officials from all over the country to talk about municipal issues and solutions and to lobby the federal representatives at our disposal in the Capitol building to really hear our priorities as municipalities. On that latter issue, I was actually a little disappointed. So few of the attendees from other cities do lobby, and I think the conference is not super organized around how to be a better lobbyist and how to coordinate and how to make sure that we're lobbying together, but rather more focused around their lobbying as an organization, not our lobbying as individuals, and frankly the very important and very exciting knowledge exchange and educational kind of workshop hosting that goes on at that conference. So I was super impressed by the education side, but I spent a full day meeting with Representatives Moulton and Clark and Capuano and Lofgren and Polis's staff. These are Congress people that either I've met and know or that are local here. And in the halls of the Longworth building and in the other halls of Congress, I really didn't see other municipal officials that day. I saw some from Milwaukee, and I saw maybe a handful of others, but with hundreds, maybe even a couple thousand municipal officials in D.C., we could have been a huge lobbying mass. We could have been a powerful force. And I'd like to see in the future the NLC leadership engage on the issues of lobbying education and of lobbying organization that we will all need as non-professional lobbyists to get that kind of thing going. I brought that up with some of their leadership, and I'll continue to follow that thread so that we can be more effective next year in D.C. as a group. It's a very large, potentially powerful group. I did lobby on a few issues that the NLC considers a priority that I also align myself with. Those are issues like reauthorizing a highway spending bill so that we as municipalities aren't picking up so much of the tab for our repairs and for our transit infrastructure. That bill will almost certainly lapse, and there will need to be a stopgap measure to fund some of our transit spending and infrastructure spending. There will probably need to be an internet sales tax so that our local businesses are playing on equal ground with internet businesses. It's a slightly painless, more or less painless thing for buyers, but for businesses it really adds up when someone goes online, time and again, just to avoid that sales tax. But when they have to pay it, frankly, when I go to Amazon now over the last year with their sales tax in Massachusetts, it's been painless. It's not a thing. There's also a municipal bonds tax being threatened in Congress, and the fact that cities all over the country can borrow without having to pay that particular tax on their large capital expenditures is extremely important to us, and I'm sure to all municipalities. So I suspect that will fail, and that will be quite good for Cambridge. I also had the opportunity to meet in the Department of Education with the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Education, and in the White House with a few different officials, one of whom Vice Mayor Benzin was kind enough to connect me with. Everyone around Washington, D.C. is talking about Tech Hire, an opportunity for us to send community college students, non-credentialed high schoolers, others who are coming out with great potential and great hope, getting them the education that they need and the credentials that they need to participate in the tech economy, but maybe without all the debt and without all of the formal higher education that we've come to depend on as an economy. There's other ways to be productive in the innovation economy, and President Obama, when he addressed us at NLC, said it best, if you can do the job, you should get the job. And I think that's true, and big players like Google have increasingly been looking to the portfolio of applicants rather than the resume credentials and college grades. That being said, there's a big implementation gap, and I think we can play a big part in it with some of the education work I've been chairing, and Vice Mayor Benzin and other councilors have been very interested in and collaborative in along the way. We are doing the real implementation work. How do we take people in middle school, in high school, and beyond, and actually bring them the programs that excite them, that build that passion, that credential their learning, and that in the end allow them the agency in their own economic outcomes and in their own potentially educational outcomes that they deserve, and the participation in the innovation economy that we, I think, in Cambridge all hope for. That implementation work is not being discussed in detail in these discussions on tech hire and in other discussions, and I'd really like to continue my White House discussions, and it sounds like they'd like to continue those discussions with me as well. So too on Capitol Hill when we met with Congressman staffers, and they had rapt interest. I had 5 meetings, probably took about 5.5 hours, and that was a back and forth conversation where I think staffers, even staffers whose area of expertise is workforce development, are learning a lot from what I'm doing and what we're doing in makerspace education, hands-on learning, out-of-school time coordination. Cambridge may be leading the country in some of these ways, and I really want to make sure that we're interfacing with the federal priorities, that we're garnering the funding we deserve, and that we are sending our working models to other municipalities and other programs for implementation. Those aren't the only priorities that we discussed. There was a great deal about My Brother's Keeper. There's a great deal about makerspace initiatives. In the White House, there's a new Maker Caucus on Capitol Hill, which is fantastic for me as a makerspace owner and founder to hear. 4 years later, as far as my experience is concerned, it's amazing to see this enter the mainstream, and it's amazing to see it enter the educational mainstream as well. What I think we need to do now is introduce some of the legislation that we were invited into by the White House that includes prioritizing hands-on learning and other types of maker technology, that includes reaching out to community colleges like Cambridge Community College and Bunker Hill to provide them some of the pipeline discussions and support that we have been talking about in Cambridge and that are so key for students who may be going into community college but not necessarily landing in jobs, and a host of other initiatives that we can opt into and promise to fulfill in keeping with White House guidelines that we will be receiving and introducing as policy order this week or next. That is kind of our 5-day journey in 5 to 10 minutes. There's a huge amount more we can talk about when it comes to how the federal government impacts our day-to-day here in Cambridge. It's an issue near and dear to my heart, and if you'd like to reach out because you have ideas, questions, or concerns, I'd very much welcome a conversation on this. And